What's up, Facebook? What's up, 1776 Nation? That includes Dear Jonhson Country and also Rattletrap 1776 and Rattletrap 1776 Nation. As promised, I always go live as much as I can on Sunday. I'm going live a little early today. I realize some people may still be in church, but you'll probably get more of God in this church right here of 1776 Nation than you will in some of the churches out there who are preaching nothing but propaganda, drama, and fear. They're not preaching the Word of God, that's for sure. So, not the God that I know anyways. So just a quick reminder, there are a lot of fraudulent pages out there, ton of them, so be sure you're following the correct pages. I have started posting these videos now to YouTube because there's a YouTube channel out there that is not mine, and they're getting thousands and thousands and thousands of views. And there's no telling what they're doing behind the scenes. Have no idea. It's one thing if you feel like you're trying to contribute to society and trying to spread the word, but it's another thing when you're ripping videos and you're putting it on a app that actually makes money by doing so. So there's some ulterior motives there more than likely. So be sure you're following the correct pages of mine. The easiest way to do that is Linktree, linktr.ee/1776 Nation. If you don't see a page on there, it's not mine. All right, plain and simple. Or I don't want you to know about it. I do have a couple of Facebooks that we created to have in the chamber when Facebook were doing all their shenanigans. But other than that, it's not in use. All right, so there's little things like that. So be sure you're following correct pages. Also, I'm not your husband. I'm not your boyfriend. I'm not your daddy. I'm not your uncle. I'm not any of those things. If I meet you in person, I'm the most coolest, calmest, collective person you'll ever meet. I will engage with you as long as you're not cussing at me, yelling at me, threatening me. All right, but I'm direct, I'm straightforward by nature and also by raising. All right, so if you feel like I'm yelling at you, you're not the only one receiving this. You may be on your phone and it may perceive that way. All right, but I make videos for the general public. All right, I typically lean towards making videos for the audience that hasn't heard me yet. If you've heard me, you're where you need to be. And you're where you need to be to do what? Be a recipient of the laws and the orders of which I outlined. The only thing I outlined is the 45-47. Now, I knew about that dash long before President Trump put it there April the 2nd, 2023. And that's in proof via my things called the documents. And also, when I signed my publicity contract at Trump International, the only person allowed to sit at his table in his chair, I'm the first person who ever got to do that and sign my publicity contract, February the 18th, 2023. All right. That was long before April the 2nd, 2023. That was my publicity contract in order to write the books that I've written, which here's part 1 and part 2 is over here. But The Midnight Rider Rides Again went into publication December 2023. All right. But they stem from my documents that I had written from 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and I published those January 2021 on my Google Drive, which were mainly for friends and family, obviously. All right, so I already knew. Now, you're going to have people out there that say they already knew and whatnot, and whatever, but most people are what? Bandwagons. And that's okay in another way, because the end goal of all this is for humanity, and it's for unity, but it's for the correct kind of unity. It's not some kind of agenda type unity, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So, again, my style may not be for you, all right, but I'm direct, I'm straightforward because I was raised that way, and I love how I was raised. And again, I'm not your boyfriend, I'm not your husband, I'm not your cousin. And if I am your cousin, then you know me, right? And if I'm in your family, then you know me. So you know how I am, all right? So the only thing that matters is my mama loves me and my daddy loves me. That's the only two people on the planet that I have to please. And as long as they're okay with me, I'm doing all right. All right, so there's that. So again, I'm not yelling at you. I'm showing you what you need to know. I'm also not here to put down other podcasters or influencers or those things. However, there's a huge difference, and we're going to go over this. There's a huge difference in someone who is just trying to do good by society than someone who makes you think that they're somebody, and they're not. All right, so you got to be careful, because that's what leads you down a rabbit hole. That's what ends up with the comment, drink the Kool-Aid. So you don't want to drink the Kool-Aid. All right, you want to be around somebody who is not afraid to hurt your feelings, not afraid to tell you the truth, and not afraid to snap you into reality. All right, I'm not worried about cancel culture. It's so funny. My team and I received some comments over the last few weeks about, you're losing people. I haven't lost anybody. I've gained in numbers, drastically gained in numbers. I think we gained 25,000 followers on Facebook alone over a course of a few days. But if you're worried about my numbers, then you're not doing what? You're not utilizing my pages like you should. All right. I'm not worried about numbers. If I end up with 2 followers, well, guess what I started out with? 2 followers. And I know who they are. All right. So, this is a military operation. Therefore, you need a thing called military minds. All right. Straight up. Now, where that gets dangerous is you'll have people out there who just love the military, study the military, all right, but don't know really the intricacies of the military. All right. So that's where it can get dangerous. Now, where it also can get dangerous is the fact that there are some veterans out there who are also trying to give their opinions and put their spin on it as a veteran with a DD-214, but guess what they don't have? They don't have the complete picture of the what? 45-47 laws and orders. I show this over and over again, and I do this always just like this, all right? It's hard to do it. But if you can imagine putting brackets around that right there, it's not going to end at 47. But if you can just see this as a full visual, as a whole operation, the whole thing's an operation. Every aspect of it is. Just like this quote-unquote shutdown right now. The people who are still whining, complaining, nagging about that part, you don't know anything about a continuity government. You don't know anything about a military occupation. The whole thing is an operation. And until there is a full, complete revocation of the continuity government, we're still in a partial continuity government. Therefore, anything that happens with Congress has already been planned. It's pre-planned. That's why you got to know a few things. And there's a lot of good people out there. There's a particular person who messages me all the time on Instagram, and they say, I don't know everything, and I'm struggling, but I'm trying. That's all that matters. But you got to know a few key terms, terminology, and verbiage. The terms first. Definitions, index, glossary. You need to know the terms first. Then, once you know the terms and definitions, then you can apply it to a sentence and a paragraph in one single law. Then once you learn the one, then you can take them all and pair them together. All right, God gave me the unique ability to be able to take all this at one time and put it together. But in reality, if I was being a little braggadocious, in reality, all you would need is someone like me to show you what the commander's working with. Because the only thing you need to know is what President Donald John Trump's working with as a wartime president and a supreme commander. That's all you need to know. And if I was going to be a little, not braggadocious, but a little bit towards not being selfish, but if I was going to be a little sad, I guess if you will, which I'm not, but if I was going to be, I never dreamt we would reach a place in society where Americans hate or despise and or all the other terms towards a veteran like I have received over the last 3 years. And I'm not the only one. I know plenty of veterans that know what's going on, and also the ones you see me on with on podcasts. I'm not the only one who receives what I receive. But I never dreamt that we would reach a place in society where people who claim to be a Republican, conservative, MAGA, patriot, you hate a veteran, and or you want to keep your opinions and you don't want to believe that this means something? When you have any negativity, drama, propaganda towards a veteran who's outlining this right here via laws and orders currently invoked, not only are you trashing the veteran, you're trashing the United States military, you're trashing all the military minds, you're trashing every single person, active duty, reserve, National Guard, every branch, and you're also trashing President Donald John Trump. There's no separation. No different than you cannot separate. If you're a veteran out there, you cannot separate Title 10 from another Title 10. You can't separate Title 32 from another Title 32. Can't do it. All right, it's just not there. Which reminds me of one thing. I got to write one more note down here. So you can't do that. And so many people, also, if you're over 40, what you do is this. You revert back to what you think you know. You also use your age and what you call your experience in life. You call that, and then you look at someone like me and you think I just fell off a turnip wagon last week on a pig farm in Iowa and bumped my head, and all of a sudden I have this unique gift to memorize. You don't realize I'm almost 43 years old, retired veteran, and have a lot of other things in my life that don't really matter because it's not about me. But if you want to make it about me, you forget that I've had a life too. I'm not some 20-year-old with a good memory. And a lot of you get in my comment boxes and you act like that I just fell off a turnip wagon last week on a pig farm in Iowa. Ain't the case. So some of you have a problem with someone knowing more than you. And it's not being better than you. Just because someone knows more than you don't mean that we're better than you. It don't mean that we're talking down to you. We're trying to lift you up. We're trying to elevate you. But we're also saying when we elevate you up here on this platform with us, don't all of a sudden act like you're King Tonto and you're going to be you're going to rule the roost yourself. No, you didn't know, and that's okay. But we can help you out because you still need to pull your weight. People always ask me all the time, why does this matter? Have you not seen what we lived like before 2016? That's why it matters. Because so many Americans are uneducated and call themselves educated. You're educated on drama, you're educated on propaganda, and you're educated on materialism. You're not educated on what matters. You're not educated on this, I can tell you right now. And this is simple. It's not even difficult. It's not that difficult. Once you know a few keywords, a few key terms, index, glossary, definitions, laws, and how they apply. So, military minds, military operation. Now, veterans out there. I don't like always using the term veteran because I'm not a veteran that's just all about being a veteran. I was a country music artist with Billboard hits. I also did something in country music that no one's ever done before. All right. I went up the Billboard chart independently. See if I can get this book out. I went up the Billboard chart independently. And my team was the #1 team in country music. We got into the 40s on the Billboard radio, not Hot 100, which labels don't even use Hot 100. They don't care about Hot 100. Billboard Country Airplay is where they score all their #1 hits. So I go up Billboard, and I had major record label meetings back then. And once I figured out how it all worked, and it was all a rigged money monopoly, then I did what? I didn't get a record deal. The labels looked at me and talked to me like I didn't know anything, like I fell off a turnip wagon last week on a pig farm in Iowa, and I have worked in their business. They knew me. They knew who I was. They knew my team. They knew everything. And I told the major record label, 2 or 3 of them. I said, so help me God, if I ever blow up on social media, I won't be crawling back in here with the numbers that you want me to have for marketing and advertising. So help me God. No way. Guess what I'm going to do? So help me God. I am going to tell the whole world how country music works. Boom. Did that. So, again, I didn't fall off a turnip wagon last week on a pig farm in Iowa. Let's just get that clear. We're having issues on Instagram, so I'm not sure why, but it is what it is. So this was before, and then you'll hear people out there, oh, he's just trying to blow up his music career. If I could blow up my music career before I went viral in politics, which I hate the word, it would have been in country music, my friends. It wouldn't have been in government military. But God had other plans, and I'm glad he did, because I love being here for you, with you, and along this journey to help you out. But at the same time, if you're going to use that kind of comment, you're Sunday moron. I'm going to use the word moron. I have to just use the word moron because you're a moron. All right. So veterans out there, I don't like using the term veteran because then what it becomes is then you'll have a bunch of guys with a military-industrial complex who went in for dental, medical, college, stability, paycheck, and then they want to compare DD-214s. Oh, did you go here, 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 and there? Did you do this and that? Has nothing to do with anything. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Egypt, Kosovo, Bosnia, Somalia, wherever else we've been, Lebanon, everywhere, Vietnam, none of those have anything to do with your brain. You putting your boots on another piece of soil have nothing to do with military laws, military orders, military regulations, military customs, military strategies, military tactics, executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations. Has nothing to do with that. And when you flex your muscles and you act like, oh, you did 10 tours in Iraq, has nothing to do with anything. You could be the dumbest, dumb soldier out there. You could have joined and for all those benefits and then be the one who didn't want to go somewhere, but you ended up getting selected and you went and you whined and complained the whole time. Then you come back home a hero. And no one around you, unless they served with you, are going to know if you were a dirtbag or if you were actually a good soldier. But it still, again, has nothing to do with your service. Your service is not for your resume. Your service is not for your DD-214. It's not for you to go around and whack people across the head because they didn't do it, or they didn't see something you saw or do something you did. That is called narcissism, for one, and it's called selfish, for two. And you're a dirtbag if you do that. Service was not supposed to look like this whatsoever. And we have too many guys out there. That's why I'm getting to this topic today. I saw an article out there that's floating around mainstream media right now that's perfect for this comment. All right. Then we have civilians. You think you respect the military, but you only respect the uniform. And you respect the thought of it. You don't know the intricacies of every aspect of the military. There's 2-year veterans, 4-year veterans, 6-year veterans, 8-year veterans, 10-year veterans, 12-year veterans, 20-year. There's all kinds of veterans out there. There's multiple different units. There's multiple different batteries, multiple different brigades. There's all different kinds of MOSs in every branch. Everybody pulls their weight somehow, some way. Not everybody's numbers get called to do this, and not everybody's numbers get called to do that. Everybody comes together collectively. But you're supposed to be there for the bigger picture, and the bigger picture will be your military laws, your military orders, your military regulations, your military customs, strategies, tactics, publications, and then also knowing how they pair with federal. There's only 4 ways, and we'll get to that shortly. So most Americans, you only respect the military by a thought. A lot of people you'll hear, well, my daddy served, and my uncle served, and my grandpa served, and my cousin served, and that. If you didn't do it, not the same. Sorry. So there's all these little intricacies that you got to break down and put into a category. You got to compartmentalize it. Podcasters, influencers, same thing. Right now, a lot of you are confused because you're trying to validate something with too many faces. You know that old country song, "Looking for love in all the wrong places"? Well, that's what you're doing. You're looking for truth in all the wrong places. All right? You're going everywhere to every moving mouth because you think there's going to be something new, something new. The only thing that's going to be new is a disclosure of what the law and the orders already outline. New meaning the disclosure will be a validation point. But if you knew the laws and orders back here, and you knew that the bigger picture is a military occupation, is a continuity government, they're cleaning out trafficking, all forms. They also clean out the banks, the central banks versus this, and the gold standard and that, and the taxes are that. If you knew the bigger picture, you'd be fine. You wouldn't even have to know some of the intricacies. But if you knew the bigger picture, the intricacies will be even more right in front of you if you're absorbing what you're supposed to absorb. And too many of you are looking for truth in all the wrong places. You're going to every moving mouth, or maybe they look better, or maybe they sound better. Oh, this one's got muscles, this one's don't. This one sounds like this one don't. This one's more soft and he's easy going because he's a pansy ass. That's why. All right, and they're mainly civilians. They have no idea what's going on. They want to be correct. They want to be right. They always making predictions or they dance around predictions. This is not about that. This is a military operation, and you should need military minds who have been there, done that, who know the laws and orders. That is what you need in your life. You need a solid foundation. And a lot of you are not on a solid foundation. You're on wishy-washy, shifting sands daily. And you don't have to be. So then you get podcasters out there who realize, man, you know what, I can read Q, and I understand Q, and I understand shorthand, and I understand secret language, and then they find out they had a skill set that they could have actually gone into the military and utilized, but then they're 40, 45, 50, 60 years old. They're never going to be in the military, and then what do? They start consuming this, and they start gaining a following out there because they're soft-spoken and they look good and they sound good and they're more concise and they don't give you as much information as old Derek does. And then you do what? You go follow them, and then they gain a following, and guess what they start doing? They start sitting a little higher up in their chair thinking that there's some informant. And they start acting like it. And they start acting like there's somebody that's going to be recruited down the road. The military don't use civilians like that. I can go ahead and tell you right now. Not like that. Especially ones with criminal records. And a lot of these dudes have criminal records. That's why they talk trash. That's why they get defensive. That's why when they get called out, they retaliate and they try to say something about me or someone else that they know nothing about, and they try to go to a personal jab, right? A personal punch. That's how you know. But because we're in a military operation, every veteran was asked by President Trump to remember their oath. He was, and also told, asked and told. And then that right there is what I try to tell veterans. No matter what level you were, who you are, whatever it was, your DD-214, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you can be recruited back in on a different capacity. You can get opportunities not to be directly back in the military, no, but there's opportunities out there. I got one, I accepted it. But it's because I know the laws and the orders. It's because I also don't wishy-wash. I'm also not about the numbers. I'm direct, I'm straightforward, and I lead people where they need to be. Plain and simple. And if you would stop worrying about other things out there and just do what you're supposed to be doing as a veteran, you could get opportunities as well. And your negativity and all the other stuff that you bring along is what keeps you held back. And then you wonder. You wonder why they use little old bitty Davids versus the Goliaths. Then you wonder. So you got people out there who are trying to inform you, right? They may be good people, but they're trying to inform you, but they're making you think there's some kind of informant. They're not. All right? You got all these podcasters and influencers out there. They'll have me on their podcast. They'll talk about me and all these things. Yeah, they got to talk about me. You know why? Because I'm the one that has the full blueprint. I'm the one that has the full blueprint. Yeah, they got to talk about me. Because as long as they're talking good about me, they know they're going to get viewers on their pages where they can sell all their foot oil and all their butt roots and all their other stuff that they got. All right? Yeah, they got to talk about me. And then you got the ones that talk trash out there because they also know that does what? When you get in the comment boxes, the algorithms shoot up. So it depends on what kind of publicity they want. That's how they roll with it. All right? But you never see these people. There's a few of them. But you never see these civilian podcasters ever. When there's a validation point out there by President Donald John Trump, you never see them ever once saying, old veteran Derek Jonhson, there's old veteran again, validation point for the book. If it was about informing people, then they would send people to the very page that outlines the whole operation to you, not throws you crumbs like they do. That's why you never see them mentioned in the book. Then you got people out there, well, why aren't more veterans stepping up? Why aren't more veterans saying this? Why aren't more veterans saying that? Why aren't you focus on, again, what you don't have? It's like the people out there talks about the Bible. I hear people all the time talking about, oh, well, the Bible may be missing books. You don't even read the books you got. You don't even pick up and read one line out of the Bible. But you worry about what the Bible don't have. See how that works? And if you focus on a principle and go, hey, do you believe God? Do you believe in God? Yeah, okay. Do you believe God created everything then if you believe in God? Yeah. Well, if he created everything, then everything has to be perfect in its own, right? Yes. Okay, well, if it's perfect in its own, then I'm pretty sure he knows that certain books of the Bible are missing, right? That's a principle. So it's the same thing when you say, oh, why aren't more veterans? If there were 10 veterans, you'd want 20. If there were 20 veterans, you'd want 100. If there were 100, you'd want 1,000. You'd never satisfy. And one person could have all the answers. And you sat there and were negative Nancy, Debbie Downer, and all these, the world's falling on me. There was one Moses, wasn't it? Wasn't there one Noah? Well, you're obviously not reading the Bible, because the Bible, the good Lord, all right, not preaching here, and I'm not Billy Graham or anybody, but the good Lord uses the people that you least expect. That's why President Donald John Trump received so much flack from all these holier-than-thou liberals. So what we have in America, predominantly, not everybody, we have educated morons. You're educated on materialism, educated on drama, educated on propaganda, educated on entitlements, educated on ranks, educated on all the wrong things. Again. So, the Bible talks about train up a child in the way that he should go and he won't depart. Well, that means when a child is in those formative years and you're teaching them not to pick up this and not to touch that and don't look at this and don't do that, those formative years are very, very important. And what you feed to a child, especially in their mind, that's why you'll see videos out there of children saying a four-letter word because they heard mom or daddy say it. Some people think that's funny. I don't. But you'll have people out there who, prime examples, where a child will say something, or repeat after dad, or repeat after mom. It's because of what they're here, the environment in which they're in, which is very key. So you wonder how America got the way it did? You wonder why we have a bunch of uneducated morons educated on materialism, educated on drama, and educated on propaganda, and educated on things that don't matter, all about their rank and their title and entitlement and all this. So you got to keep it simple. There's a saying out there, and it don't mean that you're stupid, but there is a saying that's the acronym KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. All right. I know they strategically did it that way because some people would have thought you've been called stupid if you use that in a presentation at work and all these other things, because we have a bunch of sensitive pansies who can't handle even being told when they're being a moron, being stupid, or out of line at work or out of line wherever. So they do it, keep it simple, stupid, and instead of keep it stupid, simple. All right, but keep it simple, stupid. When something becomes a law, it becomes interpretable. Now, we the people are the government, as outlined in the Declaration of Independence. We the people are the government. All right, and I had a good question this week, and the person was saying, well, you're saying that it's future tense. There. It is their right, it is their duty to overthrow such government. When you go read the Declaration of Independence, they wrote the Declaration of Independence, which we're going to get there in a minute. I got a full breakdown of this. But when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, it was written always as a future tense because they fought the war. They established what we use today. So when they wrote the Declaration, they wrote it always in future tense. If this happens, here's what you do. Well, we the people are the government. So we the people of the government, what we want a law is that's what it should be. But guess what happened the last 151 years or more? 154 years. The judicial branch started being the legislative branch, basically. The judges, the attorneys, they started talking down to you out there. That's where you really should be mad. Now, I know some good attorneys, I know some good judges, I know some good lawyers. They're not all bad, but their entitlement and that bar and everything they've done, they flipped everything on you and society. And they talk down to you. That's where you should be mad. That's where you should be pissed, angry, frustrated. That's where you should be. Now, all that's being cleaned out, but, again, that's where you should have been mad. The judicial branch. Our founders separated the three branches on purpose. The legislative branch, who writes the laws and passes. The executive branch, who enforces the laws. And the judicial, who interprets the laws. And that's all they're there for. And the president can ask an opinion, but he don't have to, but he can. So the judicial was supposed to just sit over here, twiddle their thumbs just like this. And if someone came over there from the president or the Senate or whoever said, what do you think about this? How do you interpret this? Oh, well, blah, 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 blah. It hasn't been that. It's been the polar opposite. So this is where things, when it becomes a law, it becomes up for interpretation. And that's when you have what? Arguments, debates, mostly unhealthy debates, because Americans are what? Don't know what they're supposed to know. Don't even know the simple framework of the Constitution. Don't know anything about our foundation. Don't know anything about our history. And want everything their way, from their mindset, from their household. Don't have the ability to think outside the box and think as a humanity, to think for everybody, to think for all religions, to think for all races, all ethnicities, and all different mindsets. Now, we still have a foundation. You don't lose that. No, you don't lose our Christian foundation and our Judaism. We don't lose that. But a republic is just that. 99% of a republic can believe the way I believe, but the 1% that don't, they don't get hurt or harmed because they think differently, or, and you don't force them to think like you do. If they never leave that 1% and grow and grow and grow and become the dominant percentile, then they never get hurt, they never get harmed, they can still be gay, Buddhist, atheist, whatever they are, and they live their life. Because we still what? We still are in control of the laws, but when we're in control of that, we still should think on behalf of their safety, right, and their future. You don't alienate them and ostracize them and completely put them down. You don't go there and preach to them and act holier than thou. You let them come to you and say, hey, why are you always happy, smiling? You never waver. You let them. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing as a good human, Christian, whatever you are, then that lower percentile or whoever that person is, if they want what you got, they'll ask you about it. That's how you be a good human. That's how you be a good Christian. You don't go get on their campuses and, oh, you're going to hell and you're going to this and da-da-da. That ain't how it's going to work. In a democracy, which is not what we are, and that's what the liberals say we are, and they're always quoting democracy. In a democracy, 51% could have the majority. And if they were liberals, then the 49% have to do what they want you to do. That's what a democracy is. That's why they're so belligerent. That's why they're so angry. That's why they're so yelling and argumentative and all these other things. Gaslighting, narcissists, that's why they act that way. So see, Americans, it's your fault. Sorry, but it's your fault. And only you know who you are. I've heard it my whole life. It'll just work itself out. Well, that's what Congress gets paid to do. Well, did it work itself out? No. And if I was going to be a devil's advocate for a moment, I love President Donald Trump. He has done everything. First off, he's just the face of the whole operation. He's the one who signed up to put his face on it. He's not the one writing the laws. He's not the one. He's just enforcing it as the face. But this is the generals and the admirals, the leaders and world leaders, multiple people behind the scenes doing this. All right. But I love him personally. But if you're going to play devil's advocate for a moment, for the people who are just out there, we'll call them the rhinos, the soft rhinos that right on the fence of being a good rhino but still hanging on to the past, but the ones who say, oh, he needs to do this, he needs to change this. You got this because of your entitlement, because of your lack of education, because you think you're educated on a bunch of bullcrap, man-made bullcrap. And I can say that. I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, and I have a master's degree in business from Colorado State University, Go Rams. All right, they're just a piece of paper from a man-made institution. All those do is prove that you can go to a man-made institution and pass a man-made curriculum in a man-made society, in a man-made system that they deem is that system. And, oh, you have an associate's degree? Well, you're way down here. You have a bachelor's? Well, you're right around here. You have a master's? Oh, you're in the 8th percentile of America. You have a PhD? Oh, all man-made system. That piece of paper don't tell me when to order books, what size of book do I need, the print, the paper, the cost. It don't tell me any of that. My brain tells me that. And common sense. And then how long my book is tells me that. No, do I need to make it a 5x8 or an 8x11? That piece of paper from a college don't do any of that. All colleges do is put you in their system where they want you. And you could have a PhD, and there's still someone in there that might know the boss, right? And they've been knowing the boss, and the boss puts them over you. So even at the end of the day, sometimes those degrees don't work out either. So I saw an article that's floating around right now in mainstream media everywhere, which they're captured. They're under a wartime code, but just for the sake of, it's perfect. And it's a certain veteran out there, Iraq veteran. There's one of those titles again, old military-industrial complex, and you can tell by the write-up that this person's military-industrial complex. And this certain trader has a group out there, all right? And they're trying to tell all the National Guard or reserve components that they can file for conscientious objector, all right? Which means that you don't believe in carrying a weapon and you don't believe in war. Either or. Well, what they don't realize is that we actually have a Department of Defense, which is now Department of War, but it's still titled, when you go Google this and look it up, it's called Department of Defense Instruction, so a DODI 1300.06 for conscientious objectors. And then it's going to list under there some Title 50 clauses in there. Title 50. There's your War and National Defense booklet, codification. Title 50. Title 50 is your legislative branch. All right? It's not presidential. That's your legislative. That's also your Secretary of Defense. All right? So these people don't even know the laws and the orders. And they always want to use what? They always want to use the Constitution as a crutch. And they also want to say the terms laws and orders. But before we get there, we're going to put that on a pause. I'm going to destroy them, but I'm also about to destroy them with our history. Now, these people are the kind of veterans that go in the military, again, for medical, dental, stability, paycheck, which that's your stability, because it's solid. You don't ever pay a water bill, a light bill, power bill in the military, all right? Especially on base, you don't. So all these things taken care of, right? It's a pretty good life in the military. It is. Especially the old school one, where they had bad, piss poor leadership under Obama and back. All right? That's changing, and it's completely, drastically changing. But we're talking about the days of old of which these turds would have served under. All right? So let's just talk about our military founding. So our founders kicked off a war April the 19th, 1775. That's why my book is called The Midnight Rider Rides Again. All right. Now, Paul Revere was not the only Midnight Rider, but he was one of the most popular names that went down in history. Women actually rode that night as well. That's how women back in that era found out to be a part of the war. They sewed clothing together, they stitched flags together, and then women, cowgirls, horse girls, got on them horses and they rode the middle of the night, April 18th and 19th, yelling, "The redcoats are coming. Get ready, boys. Here they come." Right? So that's why I wrote this. Our founders kicked off a war. Did not have an established military, didn't have a Declaration of Independence, didn't have a Constitution, didn't have any piece of paper showing what they were fighting for yet. They were so hungry for freedom and had the vision in their minds of a declaration, of a constitution, that they kicked off a war first. That is how stupid these so-called veterans are when they try to make excuses that the law this and the orders that. They don't even know our foundation and our history. June the 14th, 1775, the United States Army, my branch, was established. All right, June the 14th, 1775. June the 30th, 1775, 16 days later, the very first war articles. We had war articles, military law, military regs, customs, the very first everything. We had that before the Declaration of Independence. We had that before the Constitution. We had that before the Federalist Papers. We had that before the First Amendment, Second Amendment, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 that were adopted. October the 13th, the Navy. November the 10th, the Marine Corps. December the 3rd, the first flag. 1775? Do you not hear what those all came before? Again, our Army, our Navy, our Marine Corps, our first flag, all before the Declaration of Independence, you freaking idiot, moron, veterans. How did we get so dumb in America? How are we this lazy? How are we this dumb? How are we this complacent? July 4th, 1776. Obviously, it is what you know it is. June 14th, 1777, the first flag was sworn into Congress. It wasn't the first flag, the visuals of the Grand Union flag, but it was the Betsy Ross looking flag. 51 days later, the very first flag that was sworn in to Congress as our first flag of this nation, 51 days later, flew in the bloodiest battle of the Revolutionary War. Do you hear that, Colin Kaepernick? Colin Kaepernick? Do you hear that, you freaking Muslim? Do you not hear that? The flag didn't represent the people first. It represented the military first. talking about this flag as oppression. This flag is not representing the people. It represented the military first. Maybe if you veterans and you Muslims knew a little bit about our history, you wouldn't look so stupid right now. All for your selfish gain. All for your benefits. All for you. Hey, look at me. Look at me. And all you're really doing is say, hey, look at me. I'm a dumbass. I know nothing about our history, our foundation. I know nothing about the laws and orders. The bloodiest battle. The women were so excited when they received the blueprint of what the flag was going to look like. They took tablecloths. They took all kinds of drapery. They took everything they could and they stitched the flag together. They were so proud to have a flag. You piece of shit. Colin Kaepernick. You piece of scum Muslim shit. And all of you veterans, any veteran that don't know this, you're a piece of shit too. All you're doing is trashing your very brothers and sisters in every memorial grave across this land. If you think like that, you're trashing every memorial grave. Every. You're trashing all your brothers and sisters alive, veterans that know what's going on lawfully, and you're also trashing everyone active, National Guard, Reserve. You're trashing that because you know nothing about your foundation. It's all about you, your selfish, and whatever your endeavors are with your DD 214 and your entitlements that you're trying to get publicity for. You're a piece of shit. You're a traitor and you're a shitbag. November the 15th, 1777. Articles of Confederation. First Constitution. November the 15th, 1777. It included Canada. What do you know about that? Oh man, all you Canadians up there, you liberal Canadians that don't know anything about the talk about the 51st state, boy, you didn't even know that you were included in our first Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, November the 15th, 1777. All right. The siege of, okay, I'm getting some feedback on TikTok. They don't like my language. All right. Siege of Yorktown, October the 19th, 1781. That was the last battle. Then we had the Treaty of Paris, 1783. That was the end of the war. Do you realize that? Do you hear that? So the Declaration of Independence was signed 7 years before the war ended. Our founders kicked off a war, started a war, and then wrote a Declaration of Independence before the war ended. 7 years they're declaring independence. 7 years before the war actually ended. Which means they signed it and they went back out to what? Fight. Do you know how powerful that is? Because today, because it worked, because it lasted, because it made it through all the fire, the ashes, the battles, because it made it through and it was established, and that's what we're standing on today. Do you know how badass that is? Do you hear what that's saying? These men started a war, established a military, established military law, signed a declaration, declared independence 7 years before the war actually ended. Then the Constitution came 4 years later, September the 17th, 1787. And from October 1787, so a month later, to right around, I think it was May 1788, somewhere in there, three of our founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison, wrote these things called the Federalist Papers. And all they were reassurances and also promotions of the Constitution and what it was going to be to America. After James Madison, the father of the Constitution, the founding father, James Madison was the sole author of the Constitution. And here he was writing these Federalist Papers as a promotion of the Constitution, going around and handing these to the states. How hard is this? How hard is that? It's not not difficult at all. So our founding father, James Madison, the sole author of the Constitution, is in Federalist Papers number 10 and number 14 telling you how dangerous democracies are. That is how dumb anybody who says we're a democracy sounds. Our founding fathers, these same people, even these quote-unquote veterans in this new article spreading around out there, even these veterans, they use the word Constitution in their stance. They use the terms laws and orders in their stance. And our founding father, who sole authored the Constitution, is in Federalist Papers between the 1787 writing and 1789 enacting of it, telling you how dangerous democracies are. He's also the sole author of what? The other thing these morons like to use. Well, I have a First Amendment. Sole author of the Bill of Rights, James Madison. He wrote the Bill of Rights, he wrote the Constitution, and he's in Federalist Papers number 10 and number 14 telling you how dangerous democracies are. And every bit of what these morons try to use, liberals and all these military-industrial complex veterans, sitting here talking about, I have the Constitution says this, and the Constitution that, laws and orders this, laws and orders that, this is unconstitutional. And then they'll, I have my First Amendment though. The sole author. That is how dumb America has become. March 4th, 1789, Constitution was enacted. That's why our original inauguration date in history was March the 4th. December the 15th, 1791, Bill of Rights. All right. Then the hijacking of America came. The Organic Act of 1871. They tore it up, and they wrote another one, Organic Act of 1878. All right, that's why you've heard President Trump recently. He's been saying this over and over and over again. He said, we were one of the richest nations from 1870s to 1913 before they established income tax in 1913. He said, we have more money than we know what to do with. What did they do with it? The deep state hijacked it. 1871, 1878, all these different things. You had the establishment of Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. Go look at Stoutenberg versus Hennick, 1889. Go read that court case. Go read all these little things. Then you had your Federal Reserve. You had your income tax. You had all these things. That's when Americans became captured and controlled by rhetoric. All of these people used all the same rhetoric, all the same language, all the same verbiage, but what they were doing back here was polar opposite. That's why I tell you, people who look like you, talk like you, walk like you, act like you, some of those are the worst ones. Therefore, you have to know what? You have to be working with a blueprint. You have to have a foundation, know a blueprint, and what are you presenting with your blueprint? Well, everything I talk about is everything that President Donald John Trump is using and the military is using. And all it's done for 9.5 years is work for you. Set up for your future, your establishment, your security, your safety, exactly what the Declaration of Independence prescribes and describes. It's a prescription and a description, both. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations become disruptive of these ends, it is the right of the people to what? Overthrow such government. You got to know these things. So you got to look up DODI 1300.06 and then go look at every Title 50 in there. Do you hear anything? Do you notice what I'm saying? Title 50? Yeah. So here's this article right now on mainstream media from a bunch of military-industrial complex veterans, all right, talking about how reserves and National Guard can become conscientious objectors to try to get out of duty, to get out of being deployed to the city streets. Now listen carefully now. They're trying to obstruct justice. They're trying to tell all these veterans, well, they're not veterans yet, but they're trying to tell other veterans to become a part of this coalition, and then those veterans to go tell National Guard and reserve components that President Trump is a threat and he's a fascist and he's all these things. Now listen, Listen what I said now. They use the terms Constitution, they use the terms laws and orders in their verbiage. All right. Under the Conscientious Objector, Department of Defense, Department of War, but Department of Defense Instruction 1300.06, guess what it quotes in there? Title 50. And it shows you where to go in Title 50 to see who and what and how that is prescribed. All right. How you can be a conscientious objector and all the other things that comes with it. Yes, you can be a conscientious objector, but once you make that decision, that means all wars, every war. It can't be just for one war. Now listen what I'm saying. There's two things that what I'm breaking down here. One, these are quote-unquote Iraq veterans, all right, claim to be in Iraq, all right, claim that. They didn't file for a conscientious objector. So here they are using their title for what? Clout and position. They're using their title, but then in the conscientious objector instruction, it lists Title 50. They're saying what President Trump is doing is against the law. Title 50 is not Article 2. That's not the executive branch. Title 50 is legislative branch, Congress. So if it was against the law, guess who would have broken the law? If we're going to go with the terms broken, which that's not what happened, but if we were going to go with that, if I was playing devil's advocate here, it wasn't President Trump who broke it. It would be Congress who broke it. And it would be a whom? We're about to break that down again. It would be a Democratic House and a Republican Senate, so it's bipartisan. It wasn't all Republican who did it. It was a Democrat House who put the war order in place. So here they are saying that this is against the law and all these other things. They're saying laws, orders, and Constitution. Conscientious Objector has Title 50 as its main reference point, which is war and national defense. Title 50 is your legislative branch. Title 50 is your Secretary of Defense. So, move forward, because we're going to get to the laws. But here's these veterans now, calling themselves Iraq veterans. Guess what they're not doing, though? They're not forfeiting their benefits. They're not forfeiting their medical, their dental. They still want the VA to cover them. If they're retired through their branch, they want that. They want that. Or they want the VA to cover them. I don't see them forfeiting their benefits. They love America so much, and they claim that President Trump is breaking the law, and they claim it's a fascist, and they claim the military, this is against the law for the military to be in the cities, and all these other things, and then they claim they're a Iraq veteran, but they're not willing to what? Forfeit their benefits. They're not willing to forfeit their status. If they're so against this, then why are they bragging about being an Iraq veteran? That's no integrity in that, by the way. There's no integrity whatsoever. There's zero principle, zero integrity. If you're not willing to forfeit your status, so it tells you they have a what? They have an agenda, they have an endeavor, and they're trying to make money with their group. They're trying to pull in all these people, put themselves on the pedestal, and then make some kind of money somehow, because they're not willing to lose their status. They're using their war status, trying to tell other veterans not to listen to a war order when they listen to their war order. But if they are so against the Iraq war, and I'm all for that, but if you're against the war, then denounce your status. Be willing to forfeit your benefits that going to this war gave you. Forfeit your benefits. Go down and say, I want out. You can do this. You can get out of your benefits, or you can donate your money. You can donate your paycheck to some charity out there. Don't go to the VA. Don't use the VA. Take your happy rear end to a regular doctor. Pay out of pocket or get you some private insurance. Go to a regular doctor. Don't go to the VA. Because the principle is this. The principle is you served under Title 10 orders. You served under the law. You served under the Constitution. You still served, whether you knew what you were serving under or not. You still served. You still took orders. You did what you were supposed to do. So the principle is this. The principle in integrity is to drop all your benefits, drop all your medical, your dental, everything, forfeit that, or donate it, and then stand up and say what you're saying. Then you can have your First Amendment. So let's talk about President Trump now. Let's talk about the dash. All right, right here. 45-47. Let's talk about it now. All right. 0 foreign wars. He has not started one single foreign war. Iran, Venezuela, those are strategic strikes. Those are not wars whatsoever. But you do, if you just go back, before we get to those, if you'll just remember for a moment, do you remember in 2015 when he announced he was running for president, rolled down the escalator and all these fun things? Do you remember what Hillary was saying back then? Hillary, Obama, all of them. Pelosi, Schumer, Schiff, Comey, all of them. Remember what they were saying? That, especially Hillary, she was saying that his temperament was going to get us in a nuclear war with North Korea. Has anybody seen the little fat boy lately? Have you heard of Kim Jong-un anymore? Have you even seen old fat boy in the news? I'm pretty sure the only thing Kim Jong-un is doing, he's been reading about how RFK is going to take the Twinkies away. I'm pretty sure little fat boy is hoarding all the Twinkies. All right, the little Christmas cookies that come out that I have like 14 boxes myself. I'm guilty. All right, I love those and I hoard those myself. All right, so it takes one to know one, right? Well, I'm pretty sure little fat boy has been hoarding Twinkies, all right? Because you ain't heard from no Kim Jong-un anymore. You ain't heard no nuclear this, no nuclear that. You ain't even heard of North Korea anymore. All these things that they assailed at President Trump, even though I know the whole thing's an operation, the whole thing is just, it's all strategic. But for the ones that don't know that yet, where are all these nuclear wars? Where are they? Where are these people? Where did they go? Where are these foreign wars that President Trump started? And if you're a veteran and you don't know the difference in a war and a strategic strike, you're not much of a veteran. I can tell you that. You don't know much. You don't need to set foot in another country to know the difference in that. You're a military industrial complex. You're all about yourself. You're selfish. It's all about you. You're a selfish narcissist. Entitlement. You're not about the team. You're not about your brother. You're not about your sister unless they do what? They agree with you. That's it. So, President Trump, you've heard him lately say, I've ended 8 wars in 8 months. It was last month, it was 7 wars in 7 months, but he added another one to the list because what has Hamas done? White flag. All this is strategic. For the people who think this is real time, you're not even doing simple math. President Trump, just a couple days ago, said, Israel needs to stop bombing, blah, 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 blah. Hamas is ready. You got to do your math when he said it here. They're 9 hours ahead over there. All right. It would have been better for it to be 2 days later that Hamas would say, all right, we're done. It wasn't even 24 hours later. He's writing a post saying, and then doing a video. All of this is pre-recorded. Every aspect of it. That is the 45-47. All right, now that's not an argumentative point, but some people want to argue it, but whatever. It's not. None of this is real time whatsoever. The whole thing is strategic. Every aspect of it. There's no deep state doing this, and the white hats are doing this, and the deep state did this today. It's none of that. The whole thing is strategic. If the deep state were doing anything, one, James Comey would be posting on his X account. He hadn't posted on it since June the 10th. If we were in the days of old, prior to 2016, the deep state, the liberals, would be atrocious right now on all their social media, all over the media, all over TV, and it would be atrocious, vicious, malicious, mudslinging like you never heard, but you have heard because you lived under it. You're not seeing that. Everything you see by Comey, so they got videos of Comey on mainstream media, but he's not on his own X account. He hadn't posted since June the 10th, but he's got a video on mainstream media, captured, controlled. If you're responding to that, it's because you're captured and controlled by the media yourself, and you don't know that the media right now are under a wartime code. And that's where you're not separating it. 8 wars in 8 months. Iran, the strategic strike in Iran. You saw all these people, even some people on President Trump's team, prayer team nonetheless, prayer people, put up a post, not our war. I'm not going to be sending my son. The person's son ain't even old enough to be in the military. Ain't even nowhere near the military. I'm not going to be sending my son to no foreign wars. I'd fire you effective immediately. You'd be gone. You'd be taking out the trash for Starbucks because they're trash too. All right? That's where you'd be. But I'm not in the CIC, and I can't do anything about you. It's not a war. It's a strategic strike, and it's already been planned. It's already been done. And if you knew the laws and orders, and if you respected the military, and if you respected military laws, military orders, military strategies, military tactics, military regulations, military customs, if you actually respected that aspect, you would actually know what's going on, and you would see that the whole thing has been pre-planned strategy, and you wouldn't look so atrocious. But that's what the world's doing right now. It's shaking out all the wannabes. It's shaking out all the mouths. It's shaking out all the entitlements. It's shaking out all that. And you're seeing who's willing to stand, take the heat, take the fire, know what's going on, and lead you to the truth, lead you to the right kind of truth, and lead you up on the mountaintop versus staying down here in Drama Valley and Propaganda Valley. Not our war. You look stupid. And I know people don't like the word stupid, but when you look stupid, stupid games equal stupid prizes. So if you don't want to be called stupid, you don't want to look stupid. Iran, executive order from Jimmy Carter, 1979. That's how long that executive order with the national emergency has been open. How old are you? Do your age compared to 1979. That's how long this executive order has been continued and continued and continued and continued with the what? The deep state diplomacy. That's why these veterans look stupid out there, because President Trump hasn't issued any executive orders that's going to lead to a 40-year diplomatic, quote-unquote, war or potential war. That's what the deep state did. Syria. President Trump terminated one executive order with Syria already with the national emergency. And we were already in a trade deal with Syria. That right there proves more than anything. He's not starting wars. He's ending all of this quote-unquote diplomacy with their executive orders and their national emergencies. Congo, another one. Venezuela. You hear all these liberals right there. Oh, Venezuela, these people were innocent people on a boat. Or they'll say law enforcement should handle this, not the military. Law enforcement don't have certain jurisdictions out in maritime waters, you morons. That's how stupid you people are. Especially you liberals. If you make that comment, that's how stupid you are. Way out in the middle of the ocean, our law enforcement has no jurisdiction, no authority over that. That is how stupid Americans have become. Liberals. That atrocious. I would deport liberals. If you opened your mouth just like that, done. I would find your IP address, track your ass down. You'd be on the first plane to Uganda by the end of the day. You wouldn't be an American anymore. So keep in mind, if you ever see me running for president, if you ever see me in that position, you know what's coming. If you're smart, you keep your mouth shut. Because I would be your, what you call, a dictator and all that. Your ass will not be here. You don't appreciate America. You don't appreciate freedoms. You don't appreciate how you get them. You don't appreciate the military. You don't appreciate anything of which we try to fight for you. You're fighting against people fighting for you. Because you're so caught with drama, propaganda, and you don't even have a foundation. You don't even know anything about it. your ass would be grass. You'd be out of here. And it wouldn't be no baseball. We ain't no 3 strikes, you're out. 1 strike, 1 pitch, you better get it right, you better hit the ball, and you better play ball the right way, or you'd be out of here with old Derek Jonhson. Boom. Plain and simple. Venezuela is an executive order 13692 by who? Barack Hussein Obama. President Trump is cleaning up this quote-unquote diplomacy. That, you libtards out there, that's how dumb you are. It's your boy, it's your buddy, it's your guy who put the executive order in place. What was it going to be? What was it going to be? Probably another 40-year executive order with a national emergency that was going to be drug out for what? Money for them, not even you morons. So see, all these veterans out there and liberals, the veterans who are acting like this, and then all the liberals acting like this, they don't even know about the capitulations from 2017 to 2020. All these nations that are working with President Trump capitulated way back here in 2017 to 2020. 45-47, that's your visual. That is a visual. Now, to you military-industrial complex veterans, all of you about your status, all about your Iraq and this and that. All right. To this kind of people in this article, all right, let's talk laws and orders. All right. If you want to use the Constitution, that's the worst thing you can use. Using the Constitution and laws and orders out of your mouth is the worst thing you can use as your stance. Worst thing. Elections. All right. All the elections. President Trump declared Executive Order 13848 with a national emergency September the 12th, 2018. The same time period, Mad Dog Mattis, all right, old Marine Corps, Devil Dog, General, right, Mad Dog Mattis is the man with his name attached to it. The one who looked like he betrayed President Trump. All right, that'll all come out, whether that was strategic or not. But Title 32 was invoked. The National Guard have been at the 2018 election polls, 2020, 2022, and 2024. All right. Title 18 is federal crimes and criminal procedures, federal law. Title 18. Title 18, Section 592, specifically shows you that it is against federal law for a soldier to be at an election poll. 1 soldier, 2 soldiers, 5, 10, unless what? Unless they are on federal duty. Federal, which means presidential. There's a Title 32 presidential call-up in place, which Title 32 means the governors consented to. So if Joe Biden was president, did you not hear what I just said? So 2018, 2020, 2022, and 2024. The National Guard have been at every election all across the states. Why would quote-unquote Joe continue troop deployment for election interference in 2022 and 2024 if President Trump is a threat to their democracy, because we're not a democracy, if he's a threat to the Constitution, and if he's a dictator, fascist, authoritarian, all these other... If President Trump's all these things they assail at him, then why did quote-unquote Joe not terminate that Title 32 order, yet kept it invoked and let the National Guard be deployed to all these states in the 2022 and 2024 elections, cohesive with 2018 and 2020? You are a moron. You are a moron. It's that simple. It's that simple. That's one of them. New York in 2023 and 2024, the Adjutant General put out a report, 2,800 National Guard on federal duty, and then you have 7,600 in 2024. That's a lot of troops, ladies and gentlemen, for the state of New York alone. Executive Order 28 by Governor Hochul calls for federal support. And then you have an Adjutant General report Well, guess who the Adjutant General is? The Adjutant General is the commanding general of every state. The Adjutant General's definition is what? It says, reports to the state chief executive, the governor, state chief, executive, governor, reports to the governor unless what? Unless the National Guard are federalized by Title 10. And you have Adjutant General reports of 7,600 National Guard in 2023 and 2024 in New York on federal duty. Go to Google, type in Joe Biden, comma, Title 10, orders, New York, nothing. Type in Title 32, nothing. Who put those National Guard in federal duty in New York? I love it. I love it. I love when people look stupid who are acting stupid. When you're acting stupid, looking stupid, talking stupid, and I know that I got the goods to make you put a little check mark by that. Texas 2024. President Trump, the only person with a presidential title to be seen with the governor of Texas, the state chief executive of Texas, and the adjutant general of Texas in the same video, the same press conference, same live press conference, was what people thought of former President Donald John Trump. The only person seen with the state chief executive, the governor of Texas, and the adjutant general of Texas with any presidential title, even though I know Joe wasn't real and it was a puppet government, it's all strategic, it's all unconventional warfare, it's all strategies and tactics, already been used in the 1940s, but for the people who just can't get that right now, the only person with a presidential title seen with the governor of Texas and the adjutant general of Texas on the same video, the same day, was President Donald John Trump. You don't at ease a former commander, ladies and gentlemen. This is where military comes in. This is where you got to know. You don't at ease a former commander. You don't salute a former commander. And a former commander from the presidential side who was not a veteran before, no veteran status whatsoever. You wouldn't be saluting no matter what. You wouldn't be at easing no matter what. You wouldn't at ease a former president. You wouldn't at ease a former commander whatsoever. And if that was President Trump as a quote-unquote former, that would have been a breach of national security. It would have been a violation of his own Executive Order 13848 with a national emergency for election interference, because that was 2024, which is an election year, which would have been Federal Election Committee rules broken. All right, rules, procedures, national security being the biggest one. If Joe was a sitting president, that would have been a breach of national security, having a former president at the border of a crisis with the governor and the adjutant general. And then there's your adjutant general again, right there. 14 states deployed to Texas before and after that visual in February 2024. 14 National Guard. What's the adjutant general's definition again? Reports to the governor unless what? Unless the National Guard are federalized by Title 10. Guess who Title 10 is? President. Title 10, Chapter 47 is your Uniform Code of Military Justice. That is military law. When we took the oath, all of you traitor veterans, all of you military industrial complex veterans, all of you obstructionists, when you took the oath, you did what? You said what? I will obey what? The orders of the president and the officers appointed over me according to what? According to regulations and what? The Uniform Code of Military Justice. Proclamation 9844, February the 5th, 2019. Title 10 was invoked in Proclamation 9844 by President Donald John Trump in February 2019. Those are the Title 10 orders that the troops in 2024 were going to the border for. It's the proclamation for the southern border. A proclamation. which is what? One of the 4 ways that military pairs with federal is what? Executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, treaties. Guess what the 4 components of a presidential emergency action document are, which expand the power of the president? Proclamations, executive orders, national emergencies, treaties. And there's full-fledged evidence of military occupation, military operation, military government by laws and orders. And you're seeing them. Those are your visuals. That is the dash. The dash are those special, unique laws that expand the power of the president, established by Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was a 5-star general, rare 5-star. That is how stupid you, quote-unquote, veterans look. You're an obstructionist, you're a traitor, and you're treason. And you should be stripped of every bit of your rank, your status, your veteran, whatever. You should be stripped and you should be deported. You are a traitor to this nation. California, you don't even need California troop deployment because all the other 2023 and 2024 already answers it. That's more unique from the 2023, 2024 than seeing President Trump back in visually. That's where you patriots have to step up even more. The 2025, because you see President Trump back in office according to what you think is, no, all this is still under continuity government. Executive Order 13961 was partially revoked, which means we're still in the continuity government. Continuity government is what President Eisenhower established. And with a continuity government, guess what accompanies it? Presidential emergency action documents. They're draft classified. You're not going to Google them, but you have an example where President Trump said in March this year, he just said it, he said, I've signed over 350 executive actions. Up to that point, there were only 150 on the register. So where were the other 200? Presidential emergency action documents. Now, here's where you deviate a little bit. You can have some fun. You'll hear liberals out there, liberals will say stuff like this. They'll say, well, the Native Americans should have built a bigger wall. Well, I'm Native American and can prove it via DNA. So why do I act the way I act? Why am I okay with everything? Why do I know the laws and orders? Why do I know the principles? And why aren't your asses leaving? Most of you who are saying that, you have no Native American in you. So if you're going to stand on a principle and integrity, then your ass should be the first one leaving. The quicker you leave, the quicker we can get back to Native Americans, and then we'll have our land back. See how that works? You also, liberals, can't use the word Constitution and then also have that same mindset. Because guess what the Constitution was written by? White people. White Anglo-Saxons. Oh, what? Come on, people. This ain't rocket science. You want to go with that stupid rhetoric that you do, liberals? White people wrote the Constitution. White people fought for it. White people fought in the Revolutionary War. White. So the quicker you leave, the quicker we can get back to more Native Americans, and then we can have a conversation about what do we want. Because I'm Native American. I got family who are Native American. So the quicker we get back to that, the quicker we can get things solved, because we won't have your nagging ass sitting around using stupid excuses that don't have anything to do with anything, and all you're doing is actually a contradiction to the very thing you claim that you support. So if the Native Americans should have built a bigger wall, then it would have kept you out. So why are you still here? Don't use the Constitution. Word of advice for all you liberals, all you rhino Republicans, all of you military-industrial complex, don't use the Constitution as your basis to stand on. That's the worst thing you can do. The worst words you can say out of your mouth are Constitution, laws, orders. The worst thing you can use. First Amendment. All those 4. Keep those out of your mouth. Because I can show you what the law says. And the laws that President Trump is operating with have been on the paper long before 2016. So if you have a problem with the law, then you should have taken that up with the legislations, all your Congresses, 114 Congresses from 2016 and back. But you didn't. That's why you look dumb, you look atrocious, you look stupid, you look selfish, narcissist, all these other things. Don't use the Constitution, don't use the words laws and orders, and don't use the term First Amendment. Go ahead and remove that from your vocabulary, because I'm about to show you what the laws show. So these people, these certain veterans out there, obstructionists, treasonous, and traitors, telling National Guard and Reserve components to file for conscientious objector and all these other things, don't take unconstitutional orders. They're all constitutional. You might want to know the Constitution. You might want to know the Declaration. You might want to know military laws, military orders, military regulations, military customs, military strategies, military tactics, military publications. You might want to know those before you go say anything like that. Especially if you're a good person and you're just a moron, which is a possibility. You can be a good person but a moron. I don't want you to be a moron. I want you to be the good person. But because you are looking like a moron, then we have to address why you look like a moron in order to get back to, are you a good person or not? So all of you veterans out there, you military-industrial complex, especially the people like in this article who has this little group, and they're trying to build this group up with more veterans, you might want to go look at Joint Publication 3-57, which is titled Civil-Military Operations. All right, might want to go read that publication. All right, it's not that long, 100 or so pages. All right, but I know one page is tough enough for your one little molecule and your little atom, that one little molecule you got up there bouncing around. It's stretched out to its max. It's got 4 chambers in their brain, and you only got one little atom bouncing around in there trying to figure out, where do I go? That's how dumb you are. But I'm trying to help you here if you're a good person, but you're just looking like a moron. All right, Joint Publication 3-57, page 46. Real simple. It says generally, Department of Defense, now Department of War, generally Department of War Title 10 forces are not used with direct law enforcement. But it says a little word in there. It says unless. And it's unless what? Unless authorized, check mark, authorized, here you go, funded or an order, but you're going to have both, depending on what it is that needs funding, unless authorized by Congress or Constitution. Well, what do we have here? December the 20th, 2019. Who was the president again? Donald John Trump. Okay. President Donald John Trump. December the 20th, 2019. Congress, Title 50. There's that Title 50 again. All of you in this group, you're trying to tell people in the National Guard and Reserves about conscientious objector. And in the Conscientious Objector, Department of War, Department of Defense Instruction 1300.06, it references Title 50. Weird. You can't have one Title 50 without the other. Wonder how that works. So Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 was put into the War Powers Act of 1973, December the 20th, 2019. Section 1550 was a part of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2020. Passed by a Democratic House and a Republican Senate, which means it's bipartisan. Congress, bipartisan. Not the President, not Article 2, not the executive branch, Article 1, the legislative branch, Title 50. Section 1550 is temporary. It tells you that in the War Powers Act, that it is here. It says on the codification, in that section, it tells you in the codification, it says that it's recorded in the War Powers Act for record's sake, meaning this is in the War Powers Act where it needs to be, but it's not for future presidents, which shows you this right here is a strategic operation. Now, let's look at what the Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 says. It says, in the first 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, and every 180 days thereafter. Uh-oh, spaghetti-o. We have some executive orders in there by the president after that December the 20th, 2019, Title 50 legislative. Then we have some executive orders because that was a green light go by the legislative branch, bipartisan. Executive Order 13912, March the 27th, 2020. He federalized 1 million reserve components, Title 10, Section 12302. Executive Order 13919, Title 10, Section 12304, April the 30th, 2020. Now let me show you how those tie in. So recently with Venezuela, President Trump put a post up just yesterday. He talked about the hemisphere. In other posts, he's been talking about the Western Hemisphere. That's not two terms you just throw around loosely in conversation. Hey, sitting around at the little grocery store, you're sitting around at your little country store playing dominoes. Man, that Western Hemisphere, blah, blah, blah. That ain't something you just throw around loosely. If you go read Executive Order 13919, it talks about a specific operation in the Western Hemisphere. And President Trump, as of October 2025, just used the term hemisphere. And guess what Venezuela ties into? Venezuela ties into an operation launched April the 1st, 2020 by Southern Command. The strike that was just on this recent Venezuelan, the two boats, the two vessels that have been struck by our military. It was our military versus Venezuela. Southern Command. April the 1st, 2020, Southern Command launches an operation with 22 joint partners. If you look at all these drug busts that have been going on in those regions, guess who's all listed? All those same joint partners on your Southern Command April the 1st, 2020 publication, same joint partners to this day. It ties into Executive Order 13919 because it wasn't revoked. Old quote-unquote Joe didn't revoke it. Title 10, Section 12304 is still open, still active. That's why executive orders matter. They're presidential. Revoke, rescind, terminate. They haven't been. That's in your first 180 days. You also saw NAFTA get torn up in the first 180 days. July the 1st, the USMCA, the new Canadian-Mexican agreement established. Very key for Canadians, very key for the 51st state topic. All right, that took place July 1st, 2020. All these things happened in those first 180 days. We just sent 4,000 Marine Corps down to Panama Canal just a month or so back. Executive Order 13936. July 14th, 2020. Why would quote-unquote Joe continue that executive order with Hong Kong? Who took over the Panama Canal? Hong Kong. Why would quote-unquote Joe, if President Trump is a threat to the Constitution, a fascist, authoritarian, and all these other things they accuse him of, dictator, all this, why would quote-unquote Joe continue this random executive order with a national emergency with Hong Kong? Why did we just send 4,000 Marine Corps down to Panama Canal? So if President Trump is a fascist, dictator, and all these other things, then guess, I know Joe wasn't real, but if we're going to play devil's advocate here, then all of you veterans out there that call President Trump a fascist, dictator, then I guess your boy is too, because they continued all these executive orders with national emergencies. And all they had to do was let them terminate. They had a 2-year automatic termination on them. Didn't have to continue them. Just let them terminate. That's how dumb you look. All right, so there's your first 180 days there. All right. Then your Venezuelan operation goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Executive Order 13692 by Obama. So there you go. If you want to make President Trump a dictator and a fascist and all these other things, then why did Obama have an executive order with a national emergency with Venezuela? See, that's why you probably should keep your mouth shut out there, veterans. You look pretty stupid. The second 180 days, you had your Abraham Accords, all right, established. Very key right now, big time key. All right, you had that established. September the 15th, 2020. And then you had a few other executive orders that quote-unquote Joe continued, like the freezing of the assets for the Chinese Communist military. You had that take place. Executive Order 13959, November the 12th, 2020. That wouldn't make any sense for quote-unquote Joe to continue because he's in a book called the Biden Laptop Report, 636 pages, that ties him in with China, Ukraine, money laundering, sex trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking, child trafficking, all of it. Making money by the Chinese, old Joe, Hunter, etc. Way back, the real Joe. All right, all this. Then you have your continuity government. Executive Order 13961, December the 7th, 2020, was the invocation of your continuity government. If there wasn't a continuity government, then why did quote-unquote Joe wait to the last 24-hour day of a presidency, January the 19th, 2025, to partially revoke it? You can't revoke something that wasn't already invoked. Therefore, it means it is most certainly real. It was invoked. It did happen. It is happening because we're still in a partial continuity government. This March the 18th, 2025, President Trump signs an executive order, 14239. And it ties in a lot of different things. But that's another continuity government executive order. It's still in a partial revocation, but we're still in a partial continuity government, which means we're still in a partial military occupation, military operation, military government. We're on the ladder, and we're working our way out, and we're working our way to disclosure, but we're still in it, as long as the law shows that. All of those laws I just mentioned, all those executive orders, are under that Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. The same Title 50 that these morons are trying to tell National Guard and Reserves to go file for conscientious objector, all right, obstructionists, treasonous, traitors. The same Title 50, which is not the presidential. It's not executive branch. It's the legislative branch. That's how dumb these people are. All right. Now, Title 10 is presidential. Title 10 is your Uniform Code of Military Justice. Title 10, Chapter 47, UCMJ. All right, so that you can't have one Title 10 without the other. Title 10, if you're a reserve component or if you're active duty veteran, we raise our right hand to Title 10. If you're National Guard, Title 32, but the oath's still the same, doesn't matter, it says the same thing. But just for the sake of, every one of those executive orders under that Title 50 that have to do with the military invokes Title 10, which is presidential. All right. But it was all under Title 50, Chapter 33, which is legislative. That's why that's very important. All right. Then you go back to your 4 ways that military pairs with federal. Only 4. That's executive orders, proclamations, national emergencies, and treaties. To prove all that is you have President Trump talking about we're an occupied country. We will soon no longer be an occupied country. He said this a year ago, coming up October the 27th and 28th. Remember Madison Square Gardens? This time last year, remember everybody, patriots, you were fretting November the 5th, and we're sitting here telling you no predictions, but hey, this is what the dash means. This was already put out in 2023. He was already claiming 47, April the 2nd, 2023. He was claiming 46. And what did he just tell you with all the generals? I'm 45, I'm 46, and 47. I don't really want the results of 46, but I'll take it because it's unique. And it's going to be this closed. And you're going to remember me. You're going to remember everything I took. You're going to remember everything. And it wasn't about me. This is about the bigger picture. It's about the bigger picture. It's not about me, but you're going to remember me. You're going to remember. You're going to remember what veteran knew. You're going to remember what veterans didn't. You're going to remember the veterans that didn't even have to open their mouth, but opened their mouth and they looked atrocious. You're going to remember. You're going to remember. You're going to know. You're going to know who knew the whole time. You're going to know who had your best interest. You're going to know. You're going to be glad and thankful that someone was willing to take the hatred, the ridicule, the mockery, everything. You're going to be glad. You're going to see it. It's going to happen. So President Trump has told you all your things you need to hear. Just this time last year, he was telling you, we're an occupied country. We will soon no longer be an occupied country. The Great Liberation starts November the 5th, and the Great Restoration starts January the 20th. Liberation, that was your 47, going into your golden age, liberation, golden age. January the 20th, which would be obviously inauguration, but that would be when he became a president again. Still wartime president, but he'll have more presidential authority versus the wartime president, which is a military government, military occupation, puppet government, government in exile, unconventional warfare, irregular warfare, whole different set of laws, whole different scenario, whole different setup. January the 20th, the Great Restoration, meaning we're going to start doing what? Well, the day before, there was a partial revocation of continuity government. Partial. So see, you saw a partial restoration. You're going to see the rest over the course of moving out of here into our 250th birthday, July the 4th. By the time we get there, it's going to be a lot more fun. All right? So, a lot of things about to take place here soon. All right? So, he said we're an occupied country. You've also heard him say, he was talking about Angela Merkel. In many, speeches and also interviews, he was sitting there and they'd ask him about Angela Merkel. He said, remember Angela? No one remembers her now. I gave her the white flag of surrender. Well, it's actually called the white flag of truce. It's the white flag of truce in negotiations. All right. And then articles by your captured media, articles have done what? Articles have talked about capitulations and puppet governments. In February this year, a reporter asked President Trump about a puppet government and a capitulation with Russia in a live interview. Those are not government terms, ladies and gentlemen. And all you military-industrial complex morons, those are not government, federal government, anything. Occupied territory, white flag of truce, puppet government, and capitulations are all law of war manual terms. You would need the law of war manual for what? Military occupations. President Trump told you we've been invaded. Our gravest threats are not abroad, they're within. We've been invaded from within. Military occupation don't just have to be in another nation. We're running our own military on our own nation. We're running an occupation on our own nation, using our own laws and orders from war and national defense. That's why you military-industrial complex veterans, you look stupid. Title 50 is war and national defense. Nothing international. Nothing international law. War and national defense is a title of Title 50. That's the actual title of Title 50, is war and national defense. That's why you look dumb. You look atrocious. You look treasonous. You look traitorous. You're all of it. You're an obstructionist. Everything. You're an obstruction to justice. You're taking up for illegal migrants. You're taking up for criminals. You're taking up for child traffickers. You're taking up for sex traffickers, human traffickers. That's what you're defending. You're defending the lowest scums on this earth. That's what you're defending. Because you don't even know simplicities of what you raised your right hand and served under. You're foreign enemy to this nation. That's exactly what you are. Every bit of those terms are law of war manual terms. And it just so happens that white flag of truce and capitulations are in the same chapter. And it just so happens that puppet government and occupied territory in the same chapter. And guess what chapter that is, you morons? military occupation. Now, what are the odds of that? That President Trump's using all these terms and speeches that have nothing to do with the federal government, nothing to do with the states, nothing but military laws, military orders, military strategies, military tactics, unconventional warfare, irregular warfare, special operations. And it just so happens in Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, guess what it just so happens to mention, all of you military-industrial complex morons? It says in that prescription, after those 180 days clauses, it says what? The use of military. What military? Regular and irregular forces. There's your irregular. There's your unconventional warfare. There's your clandestine. There's your covert. There's your special operations. And it just so happens in our Special Operations Command, it just so happens in our Special Operations Command, it just so happens that in the Special Operations Command pocket guide for unconventional warfare, it just so happens to say if the United States government doesn't participate, that the military can act via presidential findings or presidential executive orders. Imagine if you military-industrial complex morons only knew what you raised your right hand for. Law War Manual. So what we found out in this nation, and what you're going to find out even more, especially you civilians, you're going to find out who had your best interests and who's all in it for themselves, who's in it for agendas. The low-level swamp that would have grown back, thank God they're showing their faces. That's one praise report you can give right there. At least they're showing their faces, they're showing their names and faces, and they're showing you that you need to study more yourself as a civilian. You need to be able to identify these people, but the only way you're going to identify them is to have the laws and the orders, which is your prescription and description from the Declaration of Independence. That's exactly what the Declaration of Independence is for. It's for you to always have a foundation to stand on, a principle and integrity, an establishment, everything to stand on. You keep it simple. That's why there's all these cuts. They're getting all these cuts. We're leaving all these federal people, all these names and titles and images, all getting it back to simplicity, maintainability, sustainability. Getting it back to simplicity and getting away from all these people who just want a name, they want a face, they're social media whores. That's all they are. They want a name, they want a face. They want to say, oh, I said it first, look at me, I did this, I did that. It's all about me, the hell with the team, the hell with humanity, the hell. That's what they are. When you see any kind of articles like that, when you see people using the words Constitution, laws, and orders, and First Amendment, and I can sit here and show you via the Constitution, via the laws and orders, via all of our foundation, where they're 100% on the wrong side of humanity, 100% on the wrong side of a team, any kind of concept, 100% all about themselves, 100% narcissists, 100% all about their endeavors and what they did and all about their resume and their time. DD-214s ain't got jack dilly do anything. It has nothing to do with your brain, has nothing to do with your intellect, it has nothing to do with your knowledge, and even knowledge don't matter. Knowledge is not power. It's the application of knowledge that's power. And that comes daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, until you take your last breath. You're to give everything to God, your nation, your family, your friends, the correct way. And the only way you can do it the correct way is to have a foundation. And that foundation, the very thing these people are trying to use right now in their mouth, in their rhetoric, in their agendas, are the very thing they don't need in their mouth. Constitution, laws and orders, First Amendment. The Constitution is the worst thing you can use. So President Trump, here's more of your validations, all right? Occupy country, white flag of surrender, puppet government, all these things are law war manual. They're not federal anything. Mike Jonhson told you, they had an interview, you can still see it to this day. They asked him, hey, what's your roles as a Speaker of the House? He said, well, I'm not really, I don't really have a set schedule as a wartime speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no such thing as a wartime speaker. There's no official designation position called a wartime speaker. That right there is validation. There are so many validations that I've forgotten more of the validations than you know. There are so many of them. All right, President Trump, we're an occupied nation. We will soon no longer. He said all these things. White flag of surrender. All these different things are all validations that you're watching a special, strategic, pre-planned operation. The whole thing. So when you react to something with Congress shutting down, when you react to something with Iran, when you if you have a reaction, it's not a response. If you have a reaction and it's negative, Debbie Downer, frightful, scared, negative, whatever it may be, you're still captured and controlled by real time. None of this is real time. Every little thing, it's all pre-planned, strategic, special. The laws and orders show this. But in order to know that, you got to know what? The laws and orders. Right? So let's look at some emergency powers, and I'm getting close to closing here, but let's look at some emergency powers. Regulating commerce and restricting telecommunications. That's the only thing that we got to do right now. Just two little things to prove that President Trump is a wartime commander, supreme commander of a strategic special operation using unconventional warfare and irregular warfare, as if Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 doesn't tell you with regular and irregular forces. It tells you. And while we're there, might I add, before I get to these other two things right here, might I add that in the bottom of that Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550 section, you got your codification showing you it's all strategic. It's not going to be here permanently, which means strategic. In the bottom, it's an executive document, quote-unquote Joe, all right, for the people that thought he was real. This is one of those, if you think he's real or thought he was real, okay, I can play it either way because I'm going to show you how, if you thought he was real, the dude still gave up his power, all right, because it's executive document. One executive document in Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. Executive document. It is a memorandum to the Secretary of Defense, not the Secretary of State, to the Secretary of Defense. Guess who the Secretary of Defense is? Directly under the President. Title what? 50. Ooh, there's that Title 50 again. SWAT pays and other stuff. This will be a memorandum to the Secretary of Defense, and it says a few other things on there. Then it says, I hereby delegate the authority and the functions vested in the President of 1550 to the Congress Secretary of Defense. That is quote-unquote Joe on July the 19th, 2021. So if the people who thought Joe was real, that's January the 20th, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. Just 7 months into quote-unquote presidency, that will be quote-unquote Joe. For those of you who are new, when I say quote-unquote, that means it's not real. It was a puppet government. It's all planned, all strategic, all unconventional, all irregular, all special operations. All right, all military laws, all military orders, all military. Until you learn that, quote-unquote Joe, that would be quote-unquote Joe relinquishing his full presidential commander-in-chief authority to the, what does it say? It says the authority and functions vested in the President of Section 1550. December the 20th, 2019 is when Section 1550 was put into the War Powers Act. Who was the president December the 20th, 2019? President Donald John Trump. That clause is saying, I hereby delegate the authority and the functions vested in the President of 1550 to the Secretary of Defense. Well, the Secretary of Defense is directly under the whom? President. Secretary of Defense is Title 50. That's why order of successions are also important. Quote-unquote Joe is the first quote-unquote president in United States history to not have an order of succession within any military domain, ladies and gentlemen. Your Department of War, your National Security Council, or your Joint Chief of Staffs. That's your admirals and your generals. Who did President Trump just show you he was with the other day? 800 of them? So how can quote-unquote Joe have a national security memorandum when he don't even have an order of succession? Order of successions are more important than a memorandum. How can quote-unquote Joe be meeting with the generals and the admirals if he don't even have an order of succession? The last order of succession within the Department of War on paper, guess what day it is? December the 10th, 2020. Executive Order 13963. That's 3 days after the continuity of government was invoked in Executive Order 13961 on December the 7th. I'm not the person you want to debate. I'm not the person you want to talk to. If you want to be negative, Debbie Downer, say, oh, this is hogwash. I'm not the person. I will put you in a corner and slap you like a red-headed stepchild with laws and orders. This is why America looks the way it does. This is why Americans look the way they look. And even though I know President Trump is the face, the brand, the image, and all, he still put his name, face, brand, image, company, family, friends. He put himself in this. He sacrificed his old age. He sacrificed all of everything to take on all this BS, the same thing that I take on. And I don't compare myself to him but I get enough on my level that anybody who cannot understand this, you probably need to pick up knitting, crocheting, golfing, hiking, fishing, walking, something. Just go ahead and quit. We got this. We got it. We want you, but we don't need you. And if it protects your sanity and your security, we got your security first off, but your sanity, what little bit you got left, and what molecules and atoms you have bouncing around in those little craniums up there that's mainly hollow, say what you got and let us handle it. This is so easy and so simple, and it's all for your safety and security, all for your own good, etc. But it is really that simple. There's two emergency powers that you can absolutely prove everything with. One is regulating commerce. President Trump told you at the United Nations the other day. He specifically said this. He specifically said, we're using the tariffs as a form of defense. Well, all you've seen are liberals say, oh, the tariffs are being added to this, and it's going to raise the pocketbooks, and Americans going to pay for it. Okay, well, let's go with that for a moment. Why are you saying that right now? Why weren't you saying that in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024? Why weren't you saying that? Is it because you didn't know that your boy Joe relinquished his authority Presidential and Commander-in-Chief in executive document, July the 19th, 2021, in Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, which is the War Powers Act. Did you not know that? Because that's exactly what he did. If you thought he was real. I'll play devil's advocate. If you thought he was real, that's exactly what, quote-unquote, Joe did in that executive document. Pass it right back to the President of 1550, the Secretary of Defense. The Secretary of Defense is not in charge unless the President's dead and the Vice President's dead, and that order of succession has landed on the Secretary of Defense. And it just so happens that President Trump has an executive order 13919, April the 30th, 2020, in that first 180 days under Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. That's that same Section 1550 that old quote-unquote Joe is relinquishing his authority to the Secretary of Defense, the powers and authorities and the functions vested in the President of 1550. It just so happens that it's all under that first 180 days. Executive Order 13919 was President Trump giving a direct order to the Secretary of Defense. The Secretary of Defense is not in charge of this nation. So, my question to you libtards and you military-industrial complex is, where were you in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024? Because old quote-unquote Joe did not terminate one single tariff from 2021 to 2025. Not one single Obama, Clinton, or Bush-appointed judge tried to block a tariff from 2021 to 2025. The tariffs that President Donald John Trump put in place in 2018, not one single liberal, libtard, deep state judge tried to block a tariff from 2021 to 2025. And it was displayed to all of you libtards and you military-industrial complex morons, it was displayed to you that there was a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and Democrat Senate from 2021 to 2023. And not one single Title 10, Title 32, executive order to do with the military war, military orders, military regulation, not one single executive order by President Donald John Trump was terminated. Only continued. 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies were continued. Just to hand right back to President Trump, January the 20th, 2025. They all had a 2-year automatic termination on them. But old quote-unquote Joe continued them when they were automatically going to terminate. You don't like the word stupid? Don't act like it. You don't like the word moron? Don't look like it. You don't like those words? Don't act like it, talk like it, walk like it, look like it. Pretty simple. Because that's what you look like. You look like morons, you look stupid, you look obstruction, you look traitor, and treason. Every one of you. When it's an emergency power and there's emergency orders in place, invoked, current to this day, that your boy, quote-unquote Joe, the people who thought he was real, continued. All these executive orders continued. All these national emergencies continued. All these things. Didn't revoke the ones that don't have a national emergency. Didn't terminate all those without a national emergency. Didn't rescind them. Just, here you go, President Trump. But by the way, we're going to call you a dictator, fascist, communist, and all these other things. We're going to call you all these names. We're going to say you're a threat to this, this, and this. But here you go, big giant red bow. Here you go. The other emergency power that's heavily visual that proves 45-40 is restricting telecommunications. Visual, visual, visual. Restricting telecommunications. All right, so, for example, you've seen NPR, PBS lose their funding. You've seen MSNBC get hammered. You've seen CNN get hammered. You see The View is now under FCC investigation. The View is under investigation. In case y'all didn't realize that, you didn't hear that, you didn't read that in the news, because you ain't been told, all you drama feeders you ain't been told yet to oh, here it is, care for it. You know, all those. All right. The views under investigation by the FCC. All right, can't get any more clear than that. Then you got all these people who've been fired for the Charlie Kirk, quote unquote, situation, which that's a psyop. You're going to find all that out later. But still, none of that was real, but we're not on that topic today. But 100% special operations, 100% not real, 100% artificial intelligence, 100% fake, was not real blood, didn't stain the shirt, none of that, no funeral, no burial, no resting place, no authenticity. His wife wasn't really crying, all this other stuff. But that's a whole other topic. But just because, you can't be fired for a First Amendment. So if I said the most atrocious thing about your mama, or your daddy, or your auntie, or your baby, or whatever, your baby mama, whatever, you know, if I went all drama on you, and I said the most atrocious thing to you, dirty, whatever, if I said the most vicious, malicious thing, you don't have to like me. You can hate me. Yep. All right, I'm already hated for just saying laws and orders. So you can hate me, you can loathe me, you could think all kinds of bad things about me, but if I said the most malicious, vicious thing, but I didn't threaten you, or threaten to harm you, or threaten to hurt you, if I just talked about you, or said something about your mama, your daddy, your auntie, whoever, nothing you can do about it. You can't fire me over that. Unless there's a wartime order in place. All right, so you have all these visuals. You have President Trump posting twice. Here's your president, especially if you're a patriot, Republican, conservative. Here's your president telling you that he sharing this photo, sharing this article that the appeals court have upheld a ban on the Associated Press, the AP, the Associated Press, the big ones. The appeals court, if they're upholding something, it means it's already in place. Well, when was it put in place? A long time ago. All right. So that is a restricting telecommunications. That is a wartime power. That is a validation. Plus, you had CNN, you have MSNBC, NPR, PBS, all these things. Then you have the View under investigation. So here's how you tie all this in. One, that's an emergency power, restricting telecommunications. All right. President Trump's validating that. He's showing you I'm a wartime commander with wartime powers. The appeals court have upheld a ban on the Associated Press. Now, here's where you're doing the lid on down. 47 United States Code, Section 606, which is actually titled War Powers of the President. That's the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Did you hear what I just said? Telecommunications, which involves who? FCC. Who's investigating the View? The FCC. Yeah. All right. So then you have a little thing called Executive Order 13913. You hear that number? 13913? That was in April 2020. Oh, that's that first 180 days under Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. Oh, and it's the establishment of a certain commission. And that is certain commission established what? In December 2021. Who thought who was president in December 2021? The world thought Joe was president? And guess what was established in December 2021? A little thing called Team Telecom. Well, there's reports with Congress in 2023 and 2024 of Team Telecom doing certain things. So that means they were active, which means they were created, established, and active and working. Oh, well, we have a validation by the president that the Associated Press has been banned from going to the White House in Mar-a-Lago, and the appeals court upheld that ban, meaning, yep, can't go there. Well, then you look at Title 47, which is your telecommunications title, codification, Section 606. The president can revoke, rescind, terminate, ban, restrict, whatever he needs to do with internet, TV, radio, broadcast. And then you got Executive Order 13913 by President Donald John Trump in that first 180 days under Section 1550 of Title 50, way back in 2020, establishing Team Telecom.
And it was established in December 2021, the actual term, and the actual team, Team Telecom. Team Telecom are the ones who grant and deny FCC licenses. Oh, weird. Funny how that works. Funny how the laws and orders work. Funny how the Constitution works. Funny how that works. Then you have Executive Order 14239, which is March 18th this year, 2025, which is another executive order onto your Executive Order 13961, which invoked continuity government. Then you had the partial revocation, January the 19th, 2025, partial revocation in Executive Order 14146 by quote-unquote Joe, the last full 24-hour day of presidency. Then March the 18th, 2025, you have Executive Order 14239, which is for continuity government. When you go to the Federal Register and you look up any one of those orders, you're going to see the other two mentioned right there with it. So whichever one you look up, you're going to see the other two attached to them, which means they go together. They're cohesive. They work together. All right. So the most recent one is 14239, March the 18th, 2025. That one specifically ties in restoring freedom of speech, artificial intelligence. All right, it's got a 90-day clause, a 180-day clause, and a 240-day clause. It shows and proves, I've already broken that down on another video, it proves how Charlie Kirk was all operational, not real, all part of the grand operation, the bigger operation. All right, it's got national security memorandums in there. It's got a presidential policy directive from 2013 in there by Obama. And all those tie in to show you that what you witnessed on September the 10th was artificial intelligence. But it also ties into your freedom of speech, and it also ties into your communications. All these things tie into each other. So now, when you look at being fired from freedom of speech, freedom of expression, your First Amendment, the only way you can be fired, so see, here's how they all tie in. 13913, 14239, Title 47, Section 606, and then also your telecommunications. All these, how they all tie in, is now this. What did Supreme Court rule that President Trump can use? The 1798 Aliens Act. Well, if you went and read that just on its own and didn't know the other portion, you'd go, oh, okay, can deport, it is. Historians with an agenda, Democrats with an agenda, military-industrial complex with an agenda, they'll argue that the other portion of the 1798 Aliens Act expired in 1800. Expired don't mean abolished, ladies and gentlemen. It's a wartime order, which means it's only used in what? A specific kind of wartime. Well, it's not used in a Iraq wartime or Afghanistan wartime, all right? Because a wartime, a military occupation in a continuity government on our own nation, all right, wouldn't need certain things, all right? But it also does what? It also needs certain things. So the other portion that they call expired is not abolished. Huge difference. That's why terminology matters. And when they used the 1798 Aliens Act in 1798, as it sounds, in 1799 and 1800, when they used these things, it was a wartime order. Therefore, when it wasn't being used, it expired, right? It wasn't abolished, though. It's still on paper. So President Trump can use the 1798 Aliens Act part, as SCOTUS has upheld. Guess what? There's another portion to it. Guess what it's called? The Seditions Act. And everything you've been seeing with all these firings for saying something about Charlie Kirk, because guess what that is? It was an operation. It's a military operation. This is where it ties in. Listen. Don't hear. Listen. The only way they can fire people is because it's a military operation. And these people are talking against what? Talking against the government, the good laws, the good orders. They're talking against the good laws, the good orders of the military. Hear what we're saying here? That's exactly what it's saying. Because the 1798 Aliens and Seditions Act, the seditions part is this. The seditions part is where American citizens could be punished, fined, imprisoned for talking against the government, fraudulent, scandalous, whatever it may be, talking against the government and the military. And what are you seeing? You saw that. You've seen that. All right? That's why the laws and orders matter. And every bit of this operation is not fraudulent. It's not scandalous. It's not a dictatorship. It's not fascist. It's not any of these things that liberals and a lot of these military-industrial complexes are saying. They don't know our own foundation of this nation. Our nation was founded from a war. Our declaration was declared in the middle of a war before the war ended. The Constitution only has life because of a war. And the Constitution is a framework, a broad framework of what Congress, the legislative branch, the executive branch, and judicial branch are supposed to do. They've done that. Every amendment, every code, everything that has been added via legislation was the prescription of what the Constitution says. Now, I'm not a law and order guy just because the law says it. I'm a law and order guy based on what Marbury versus Madison, 1803, which is another landslide and very important case in our history. It says any statute, this is the layman's term, says any statute that looks like a law but doesn't support the Constitution is null and void. So there's a lot of laws that aren't good. There's a lot of orders that have been put in place to try to be enforced that weren't good. You got to know the foundation. You got to get in the mindsets of our founders. You got to get in the mindset of what they were thinking then, why they established it, how they established it, what they were thinking, what they were living through, what they were experiencing, all that. Too many Americans want to sit in your air-conditioned comfort chair of what you think you want your little bubble to be without looking at everybody as a whole and not looking at our foundation and not looking at the whole thing, the broad picture as a whole. That's where you get that saying, you want your cake, the icing, and you want to eat the whole thing too. Don't share with anybody else. Your cake, your icing, your birthday party, we're all here for you, but you want to hog everything. That's what that old saying means. You're selfish, you're a narcissist, and you're all about yourself. That's not what people like me and other counterparts, all of us are doing with military and what's taking place operational. Now, it's all going to be cleaned out. It's all going to be reset back on the foundation like the Declaration says. But you can already know, you can already be contributing, and you can also, if you're one of these military-industrial complex, or if you're one of these people that it does hit your nerves out there, you can unnerve yourself, and you can plug yourself in the correct way. You can wake up, see the bigger picture, snap out of all this selfishness, snap out of all this propaganda and drama, and get plugged in correctly. I'm not going to know who you are. Your friends and family will. But I'm not going to know who some of you are. Snap out of it. Leave the drama. Leave the propaganda. Leave the endeavors. Leave your own selfish desires behind. Get on the right side of humanity. That's exactly what's going on. This man is just the face, the name, the brand, the image, and likeness of this operation. He's not the only one. Definitely not the only one. There are generals, admirals, leaders, world leaders, operators, secret military, etc. There's a bunch of us involved in this. That's why he said to every veteran, remember your oath. Well, you got to know the breakdown of the oath. You got to listen to every word in it. It was formed that way. It was said a certain way. It was said in a certain order. You got to know the laws and the orders. You got to know your Constitution. But it don't really apply. That's what's funny about it. the Declaration is more important. The laws, the orders under the Constitution that support the Constitution are more important. And the laws and the orders that are being used right now support that. That is why all of you military-industrial complex, guess what you look like? You look like the reason why foreign and domestic was put into the ironclad oath of 1862. You look like a foreign enemy to the very thing you think you're fighting for and standing up for. Foreign and domestic was put into our oath in 1862. Had nothing to do with going to Iraq, going to Afghanistan, Bosnia, Kosovo, Somalia, Lebanon, everywhere else we've been, Panama, Vietnam, had nothing to do with that whatsoever. Korea, etc. It was an ironclad oath by Abraham Lincoln to make sure the people who were fighting for the Republic, the bigger picture, the Declaration. And Abraham Lincoln tells you in writing that the Declaration of Independence is way more important than the Constitution. The Declaration is what we, the people, stand on. That is what gives us the firepower. That is what gives us. The Constitution was written to keep Congress in check. And you look like a foreign enemy as prescribed in our literature, but also what President Trump says our gravest threats are within, not abroad. You look like that within. You look like it, and you're attaching yourself to it. And when you look like it, you're going to be treated accordingly. That's why President Trump said if you spit on ICE, if you just spit on law enforcement, you're done. You're done. If you step in a foreign territory, which they've established military zones, if you step into that military zone and you look guilty, you're going to be treated accordingly, and you're going to go through the processing, and you're going to have to show your innocence through this processing. You're not going to verbally say it. Oh, I made a mistake. No, you're going to be processed like it. That's why you need to know the laws and the orders. And every one of you liberals and you military-industrial complex, when you take up for an illegal migrant, they didn't come here lawfully in the first place. We're not going after all the migrants who want to be here correctly. The ones who want to be here correctly actually read a little bit. And they do what? They do what they're supposed to do. They're not taking out lawful people. They're not going after people who did things by the law. There is a process to this nation. And if you're going to stand on the terms Constitution, laws, and orders, isn't that the whole principle? Laws and orders is to abide by the laws and orders. So when you take up for all these people who don't abide by laws and orders, you're an obstruction, you're a traitor, and you're treasonous. You should be stripped of your citizenship. You should be deported and treated just the same because you're foreign to our republic. We don't want you to be. We don't want you to be dumb. We don't want you to be stupid. We don't want you to look like a moron. We don't want you to talk like a moron. We want you on the good side of humanity. But when you look like it, talk like it, walk like it, act like it, you just might be it. And it will behoove you to get on the right side of humanity. It will behoove you. But only you can do that. It's not my job to make you. It's not my job to persuade you. It's not my job to coerce you. But that's what you're trying to do. See how that works? That's what you're trying to do to people. You're trying to persuade, coerce, and make people. You have no foundation. You have no premise. You have no integrity. And if you're a military-industrial complex and you're trying to say that this is all against the law and the orders and unconstitutional, then forfeit your benefits. Forfeit the very thing that you use as your premise. Forfeit that. That's when the integrity will come in. You may sound dumb and still look dumb and look stupid and a moron, but at least if you would forfeit the very thing you're using to brag with, if you would forfeit that, donate it, forfeit it, cancel it, then at least we'll know you have some balls, some spine, and integrity. But if you're still going to use the terms Constitution, laws, and orders, then guess what you're going to be treated as? You're still the minority because Dan Scavino, all of us know that you're still in the little tiny percentile. You bark loud, but you're not that big. All right, you're still in that little bitty percentile that you can't stop what's happening, and you're not going to stop what's happening. You're also not going to fight for it. You're not going to get out in the streets and fight for it because they're going to take you to jail as well. All right, you're not going to do that. But if you do that, you're going to jail. You're going to lose all your rights. You're going to lose all those different things, right? Because you're in a wartime situation. So all of a sudden, you're going to be treated accordingly. But that's exactly what you look like, what you sound like when you say all these things. And just for the fun of it, the little cherry on top, I'll end with this just because it's so much fun to do it over and over and over again. Just as a friendly reminder. January the 20th, 2021. All of you military industrial complex veterans. January the 20th, 2021. The whole world thought they saw quote-unquote Joe be inaugurated. The ones who don't know anything about military laws, military orders, military strategies, military tactics, military regulations, military customs. The whole world thought that they saw quote-unquote Joe inaugurated as a president. You didn't. The old man, the old white man who sat in his basement with his whitey-tighties eating his ice cream that got the most votes in United States history didn't even get a ride in Air Force One on Inauguration Day, which is a tradition. Even Obama, who's a traitor and treason, whose name is not in the War Powers Act, who's got a Supreme Court docket 23-939 filed March 19, 2024, that ties him to murder, that ties he and Hillary to Benghazi, Libya, Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi, that our unconventional warfare pocket guide, special operations, specifically talks about. Title 50, there's your Title 50 again. Oh, Obama got a ride in Air Force One, but old Joe that got the most votes in United States history sitting in his basement in his whitey-tighties eating his ice cream couldn't even get a ride on Air Force One. Had to take the train in. Raised his right hand at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is a violation of the 20th Amendment of the Constitution. Uh-oh, there's that Constitution again. There's that terminology again. It specifically says that the president's term shall end at noon, high noon, noon, afternoon, noon. Noon has always been what? 12 o'clock. Oh, funny. The successor shall then begin. I guess that's why every other president has sworn in from 12:01 to 12:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go figure. Wow, what a coincidence that is. The speech on quote-unquote whitehouse.gov archives for quote-unquote Joe, the speech is titled and stamped 11:52 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And after a president swears in is when the 21-gun salute fires off. Before the president makes their speech is when the cannons fire. You didn't see that January the 20th, 2021, did you? No, you didn't. Huh, weird. Why is it that we have in presidential history that you can get on YouTube and go from 2017 to 1969, and before the president makes his speech, every time he takes the oath, the 21-gun salute fires off immediately after swearing in. But not with quote-unquote Joe. No, didn't happen that way. We had Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like Derek, who says four-letter words every now and then and gets on a liberal's head. And sometimes the dumbass veterans, Amazing Grace. Oh no, we could have Oh Happy Day. Oh, happy day. We can't have no happy song. We can't have no shake what your mama gave you. We can't have no ghetto rap music. Yeah, all this bull crap that the Democrats established as well in the prisons, the CIA, and all the rap music they couldn't have no back that thing up. You know, couldn't have no ghetto, get down, no all that. Couldn't have no happy song whatsoever. Couldn't have no George Strait. We couldn't have nothing happy. For the man who sat in his basement in his whitey tighties, the golden hairy legs, all the black kids want to touch my golden hairy legs in the pool. Somehow his hair went from gold to brown legs when he was president. How that happened, I don't even know. How do you go from gold hair to brown hair? Well, pretty well, I don't know. All these miracles took place. We had the man who got the most votes in United States history. And we got to hear Amazing Grace that you hear at every funeral that you go to, just about. Every funeral has either a cappella in the church service or the graveside. Everywhere it's a funeral song. It ain't no happy song. Even though it's saying it saved a wretch like me, it's still a sad funeral song. We can't get no ghetto music. We can't get no George Strait. We can't get no happy music. We can't get no nothing. We got to hear Amazing Grace. No review of the troops. Didn't walk by the troops. None of that. Nope. None of that. None of that good stuff. Didn't get that. Nope. So, then you had the motorcade. No National Guard, no Reserve. Where you at, military industrial complex morons? They didn't even salute your boy. Y'all saying President Trump's a dictator and all these things. That must mean that you're for Joe Biden. So none of your boys, none of your girls out there saluted the motorcade? None of them. Not one single soldier saluted the motorcade. They didn't even salute a moving flag. We always salute a moving flag. Then, the mainstream media told you that the 3rd Infantry Regiment, known as the Old Guard, the official presidential salute battery was with President Donald John Trump at Joint Base Andrews. Huh. Wow. Well, the official salute battery, the 3rd Infantry Regiment, they just so happen to be the oldest unit in the United States Army. 1784. Oh. So they all of a sudden got all this stuff wrong after all these years. This one inauguration, they got all this stuff wrong. They were over there with President Trump, not with quote-unquote Joe. Mainstream media told you this. Red carpet rollout for President Trump. 4 cannons, 21 rounds fired, ladies and gentlemen, is the official number count for 21 gun salutes. 4 cannons, 21 rounds. Those are with President Trump at Joint Base Andrews, January the 20th, when he thought he was riding off into the sunset. Nope. That was your constitutional, full military, full 21-gun salute, full inauguration service right there in front of you. Then the split screen that day showed you old Joe riding down, no one saluting, showed you that right, and then on the other screen it showed the 3 cannons sitting there at Arlington. The only cannons shown all day long for quote-unquote Joe were 3 cannons at Arlington National Cemetery. The first time in United States history that they've ever shown the cannons at Arlington on Inauguration Day. They were all fat, not regulation uniforms. They looked like the soldiers that Headset's been talking about. The fat, can't make tape is what we call it in the military. We're not fat shaming, just calling it what it is. Pleasantly plump, whatever you want to call it. Chubby, tubby, whatever you want to call it. They were all fat. They were not in shape. They were not regulation uniforms. They were not the official presidential salute battery. They're not the 3rd Infantry Regiment. None of that. You didn't see any marching ceremony. Nothing. Nothing no, with any finesse. No marching. No military bearing. They're all moving around. They're all doing this. They're waiting on their cue because they're all actors. It's all central casting. It's all theater production. All on TV because they have you captured and controlled. You target audience. 3 cannons at Arlington. It's not a 21 gun salute. And just for the sake of, before we get there, rank. Army Regulation 600-25 2-3 cannon salute. You military industrial complex morons. Your own, our own, I'm Army, was Army. Army Regulation 600-25 2-3 cannon salute says there's to be a commissioned officer at every cannon salute, no matter what it's for. There wasn't a commissioned officer shown for the quote-unquote Joe. 3 cannons at Arlington. By definition, when you go to ArlingtonNationalCemetery.mil, it tells you this. The 3 volley salute seen or heard at Arlington is not to be confused with the 21 gun salute. The 3 volley salute is a funeral. Military funeral. Now, just for the sake of it, because there was another moron 2 years ago claiming to be Army saying, well, it's because the cannons are always at Arlington. That's correct. Because you want to be correct, you are correct. But the first time in inauguration history, the only cannon shown for what people thought was the president, they showed the cannons at Arlington as the 21 gun salute, and it's not a 21 gun salute. The first time in U.S. history they've shown the cannons at Arlington on January the 20th was the only cannons they showed all day long for quote-unquote Joe. And it's a funeral service. Now, January the 20th, 2025. Guess what you didn't see January the 20th, 2025? You didn't see Arlington National Cemetery. President Trump was at Arlington January the 19th, 2025. Did you see the cannons? No cannons. All you saw was the wreath of the grave of the unknown soldier. You didn't see the cannons. So they separated that as a clear visual and clear validation, clear proclamation, timestamp, everything, optic, visual, validation. The only now, quote-unquote, inauguration in United States history that showed 3 cannons at Arlington on Inauguration Day was quote-unquote Joe. On January the 19th, they showed President Trump at Arlington, no cannons. January the 20th, as soon as he swore in, even though they were inside and not at your typical, guess what the camera showed? What did they show you? 4 cannons, 21 rounds in the National Capital Region. Guess where it was? Guess where it wasn't? At Arlington. Was not at Arlington. Was in the National Capital Region where they've always been. So when you want to use the terms Constitution, you might want to know how it's applied. When you want to use the terms law and order, you might want to know the laws and orders and how they apply. When you want to say you got a First Amendment, when mine trumps yours, all Trump intended, you ain't got a leg or a foot to stand on. That means mine trumps yours because mine is for the foundation. Mine is for our history. Mine is for what they mean, what they say, what they define, what they outline, etc. And that's why you're losing. That's why you're going to lose. That's why you can't stop what's happening. You can't stop what's coming. And you're not going to stop it. And you're not going to change it. And when Americans find out that there's been a book in place the whole time, this one and part 2, which I have somewhere right here, part 1 and part 2. These have been in publication since December 2023, and they stem from the documents from January 2021. When people find out that there's a blueprint in place to show you what's taking place that's so historic and monumental, that could have led them out of all the negativity, the drama, the propaganda, and all the moving mouths, all the millions of faces and lips flapping their gums daily on Rumble, YouTube, everywhere else, StreamYard, etc. When people find out there's an absolute blueprint in place by someone who can show you all the laws and orders at one time and not throw you crumbs and lead you to the .gov, the .mil sites that outline what the commander is working with. It's all visual. It's all public. Nothing secretive. What has been shown that I outline is all public, not secretive. There are things I do know that I don't tell you. All right? But it's nothing bad. Nothing bad. The whole thing is a strategic blueprint in operation. The whole thing. So put brackets around it like that. The whole thing. Everything that happens from 45, November the 8th, 2016, but really January the 20th, 2017, and January the 20th, 2026, every aspect of it is a whole operation. And if you panic, stressed out, angry, mad, bitter, upset, whatever it is, negative, all these other things, sad, gloomy, you shouldn't be. The whole thing, every aspect, is a strategic, pre-planned, planned, special operation. We got this. Everything. Military's been in control, been in charge, everything. So, we'll see you guys soon. Love and appreciate you. This one needs all the shares in the world because, again, there's too many military-industrial complexes out there that need to step up the correct way. And then also, the liberals out there, they ain't all bad people. They're just on the wrong side of humanity. So, we'll see you guys soon. I got a full slate this week of podcasts, I know, but I'm going to try to come on a lot more often. As I did this past week, I did 2 different lives. So, I'm on Instagram and also TikTok live right now. Make sure you're following the correct pages. Again, Linktree, linktr.ee/1776 Nation. Make sure you're following the correct pages. And then also, these are on Rattle Trap, RATTLE, rattletrap1776.com. All right, you can get these signed by me. If you're international, or if you want them quick for a birthday or something like that, then your best bet is to go with Amazon. But they're #1 bestsellers for a reason. All right, and then also, if you're country music related, like I started off earlier, if you want to know the secrets of how it's all rigged and how you're captured and controlled as a fan, and you support a bunch of woke DEI bullcrap, which is also going to be cleaned out one by one. But right here shows you everything you need to know. It's a #1 bestseller as well. Same thing. Rattle Trap, RATTLE, TRAP1776.com, or Amazon, again, if you want it quick or if you're international. Also, my music, still a Billboard, forever being Billboard history, but DerrickJohnsonCountry.com, DerrickJohnsonCountry, DerrickJohnsonCountry.com. That's me, official. And then also the documents.info if you want to see what was put into place from way back here that was published in January 2021. It's dated. Obviously, it's not all of it, but it's still free. PDFs, free, paid for by me. Right, all this time period, the documents.info. So if you want to go back and read, what notes look like and things like that. These are more fine-tuned. These right here are more fine-tuned, but all those are my websites. That's how you reach me. That's how you contact me. If you want me to speak somewhere, then you got to go through DerrickJohnsonCountry.com, find my management, and you'll find the email, contact information there, little things like that. And then that's it. So I'll be on here a lot more often. Be sure, again, following the correct pages.